Imagine waking up tomorrow, grabbing your phone off the nightstand and seeing a perfectly convincing video of a world leader declaring war.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right, you panic, you text it to your family, you share it online, and millions of other people do the exact same thing.
Because that's just human nature.
Exactly. But then, 20 minutes later, independent fact checkers prove the video is entirely synthetic, like completely AI generated. But the damage is already done. The stock market has taken a dive, diplomatic channels are in absolute chaos, and trust is just shattered.
And, the most alarming part isn't even the video itself. It's the infrastructure that guaranteed that video reached millions of amygdalas before the truth could even, put its boots on.
Welcome to this deep dive. If you're joining us, we take massive, complex topics and distill them down so you can actually grasp the mechanics of what's happening behind the scenes.
Which is so necessary right now.
It really is. Today, we are immersing ourselves in Dr. Milton Biswas's sweeping new book, America at 250, The AI Democracy. We are looking at how artificial intelligence is actively rewriting the DNA of democratic life.
It's basically turning our screens into highly contested battlegrounds for our attention, our emotions, and ultimately our votes.
Okay, let's unpack this. Technology has, it's always shaped how we govern ourselves, but Biswas builds a very strong case that AI is fundamentally different. It isn't just a passive tool like a microphone or a printing press.
Right.
It is an invisible, active participant making microscopic decisions about what you see and what you believe, literally millions of times a second.
The shift is profound.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to state up front, the purpose of looking at this isn't to sound dystopian alarms or tell you to throw your router out the window.
Right, we're not doing the whole doomsday thing.
Correct. Exactly. The objective is pattern recognition. We are trying to spot how power is shifting away from visible traditional institutions like things we can point to and moving into opaque lines of algorithmic code that function entirely out of public view.
To really understand how AI is hacking the modern democratic process, Biswas argues we have to understand the historical baseline, right? We have to look at how previous technologies reshaped political power so we can see why this current disruption is so unprecedented.
Yeah, you have to look backward to look forward.
Right. So he takes us all the way back to the 15th century, to Gutenberg's printing press. Before Gutenberg, knowledge was completely monopolized by medieval elites and the church. You had monks literally copying books by hand.
Just incredibly slow and controlled.
Extremely controlled. And then the printing press comes along and democratizes that knowledge, fundamentally shattering those old information monopolies, which, well, eventually it paves the way for the Enlightenment and modern democratic ideals.
And if you follow that thread, every subsequent leap in communication technology brought its own unique structural shift to political power. Like, jump to the 20th century. Radio and television took that decentralized print culture and hyper-centralized it.
Oh, like FDR's fireside chats.
Exactly. Think of Franklin D. Roosevelt during the Great Depression. Radio allowed a president to bypass the newspapers and speak with unprecedented emotional intimacy directly into the living rooms of millions of citizens simultaneously.
And then television comes along and just adds the element of visual spectacle.
Oh, completely changes the game.
Right. You look at the famous 1960 debates between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. Nixon refused makeup and looked pale and sweating. Meanwhile, Kennedy looked like a movie star.
Yeah, and the data on that is wild.
It is. Radio listeners thought Nixon won the debate, but television viewers overwhelmingly thought Kennedy won. Suddenly, politics became highly dependent on charisma, physical appearance, and staging.
But structurally, it was still mass broadcasting.
Right.
It was one single message being beamed out to millions of passive viewers. And then we get the internet in the 1990s and 2000s, which promised to bring us back to a decentralized, horizontal utopia.
Think about the Arab Spring. The narrative was that everyone finally had a peer-to-peer voice without needing a massive broadcast network to be heard.
That was the utopian promise, yes. But here is the critical pivot, the exact moment the paradigm flips completely. We have moved entirely away from the mass broadcasting model at one-to-many architecture.
Because of AI.
Exactly. Because of AI, we are now living in an era of hyper-personalized realities. It is a many-to-one model. The AI algorithms running social platforms are not neutral distributors of information.
They aren't just like a digital post office.
Right. They don't work like a radio tower just radiating a signal in all directions. They are predictive engines. They actively curate, filter, and predict exactly what will keep your specific brain engaged.
It's kind of like moving from everyone in a town sitting in a theater watching the exact same play on a stage to everyone in that town wearing a VR headset. And the headset is showing them a completely different play, custom written in real time, to push their specific individual buttons.
That is a perfect way to visualize it.
Right, because you might think you're participating in a shared civic experience with your neighbors, but you're actually completely isolated in a bespoke reality.
That analogy hits at the very core of the problem. With previous media eras, newspapers, radio, television society relied on visible human gatekeepers. Editors, journalists, network executives, they decided what the public saw.
And they had their flaws.
Oh, deeply flawed and often biased. But they generally operated under some semblance of journalistic norms, ethical standards, and public accountability. Today, those human gatekeepers are gone,
Replaced by code.
entirely replaced by automated, opaque algorithms. And those algorithms are driven by a completely different set of incentives. They don't care about civic duty, they care about commercial yield.
Which brings us perfectly to the next massive piece of the puzzle. If these algorithms are the new gatekeepers, we have to look at why they're showing us these customized, isolating plays.
You have to follow the money.
Right. Biswas says we just have to follow the money into what he terms data capitalism. Human attention has basically become the ultimate finite resource.
And it goes much deeper than just competing for our waking hours. We're talking about the extraction of cognitive surplus. Tech behemoths monetize our attention by harvesting an unfathomable amount of behavioral data.
It's so much more than just what you click on.
No, absolutely. It is not just what you click. It's the exact number of milliseconds you dwell on a specific image before scrolling past it. It's the geolocation data of where you are when you read a certain headline.
Wow.
Yeah, all of these invisible micro-interactions are harvested to build psychographic profiles of staggering detail.
And the algorithms powering our feeds use those profiles to optimize for one single metric, which is engagement. They don't care if the information is true or nuanced or helpful.
Not at all.
They learn incredibly fast that the most effective way to keep you clicking and scrolling isn't by showing you a dry 40-page policy paper. It's by triggering strong, effective responses. They basically weaponize outrage, fear, and moral indignation because biologically that's what makes us stop scrolling.
What's fascinating here is that this algorithmic polarization is not a glitch.
Wait, it's not?
No, it is not an unintended side effect of the technology. It is a highly optimized, incredibly profitable business model. Outrage is the actual currency of the digital realm.
Because it works.
Because it works. The algorithm recognizes a very simple biological reality. If a post makes you angry or makes you fear for your community, your nervous system forces you to engage with it. You will comment, you will share it, and crucially, you will stay on the platform longer to consume more ads.
Which traps us in these filter bubbles and echo chambers.
Yeah.
You're only exposed to validating, often increasingly extreme viewpoints. It destroys the shared factual basis a democracy needs to actually function. But look, I have to push back here for a second. I'm hearing this explanation, and it sounds a bit deterministic. Aren't we giving ourselves way too little credit? I mean, if the algorithm puts a wildly inflammatory headline in my feed, my finger still has to physically tap the screen. My brain still has to choose to read it.
That's a fair point.
Is the machine actually manipulating us, or is it just holding up an incredibly ugly mirror to our own natural human instincts?
It's a vital question, and Biswas tackles this philosophical tension head-on in the book. You are correct that the system relies entirely on our natural instincts. Humans possess innate cognitive biases.
Right, like confirmation bias.
Exactly. We naturally seek out information that confirms what we already believe. We also have an evolutionary negativity bias, where we pay more attention to threats than positive news. But a mirror is passive.
Okay.
These algorithms are active and adaptive. Think of it less like a mirror and more like an invisible team of neuroscientists studying your reactions in real time. They bypass your prefrontal cortex, the logical reasoning part of your brain, and send signals straight to your amygdala, the fear and emotion center.
So it's a completely asymmetric battle.
Entirely asymmetric. You are bringing your everyday human free will to a fight against a cluster of supercomputers running millions of simulations a second, testing the exact color, word, and image combination that will compel your thumb to stop scrolling.
Wow.
Our biological hardware simply didn't evolve to defend against that level of targeted psychological friction.
Okay, so if this underlying algorithmic architecture is built purely for corporate profit, If it's designed just to keep us looking at ads, what happens when someone realizes they can rent this exact same machinery to win a political election?
Well, that changes everything.
Right. I'm looking at how much influence these platforms have over our emotions, and if I'm running for office, I don't need a public debate anymore. I just need to use this algorithm to do the dirty work of terrifying my specific voters into showing up at the polls.
And that is exactly what has happened. The transformation of the political campaign is staggering. Voter profiling today has moved so far beyond simple demographics like age, race, or income brackets.
It's gone way deeper.
It has entered the realm of deep psychological and emotional prediction. Modern political campaigns basically function as AI-enabled psychological operations.
They use sentiment analysis to predict the exact issue that keeps you, specifically, awake at night. The micro-targeting is incredibly granular. Like, let's say there's a suburban parent whose data profile shows they frequently buy home security products and read local crime blogs.
Right.
The algorithm serves them a political ad focused entirely on neighborhood safety and urban decay. Meanwhile, a young professional living a few miles away, whose profile shows a high dwell time on climate change articles, gets an ad from the exact same candidate focused purely on green energy initiatives.
And we must be explicitly clear here. These mechanisms are universally utilized across the entire political spectrum.
Yeah, it's not a left or right thing.
This isn't a partisan tactic. Both left-wing and right-wing campaigns exploit these cognitive vulnerabilities to maximize their electoral chances because the underlying math of the algorithm doesn't care about political ideology. It only cares about conversion rates. We are examining the machinery itself, which is entirely agnostic to the political viewpoints it pushes.
Look, here's where it gets really interesting to me because the mechanics of how they do this are wild. Campaigns are now using real-time A/B testing on voters.
Oh, the scale of the testing is unbelievable.
They will run thousands of micro-variations of a single political ad simultaneously. They will test an ad where the word safety is written in blue font against an ad where the word security is written in red font.
And they know instantly what works.
Exactly. The algorithm measures the microsecond dwell times of voters and instantly tells the campaign which specific combination of color and vocabulary triggers the highest subconscious fear response. They have essentially turned democratic elections into vast, real-time experimental laboratories of behavioral science.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can see how this dismantles the very foundation of democracy. The democratic ideal relies on collective, rational, public debate.
Right, everyone in the town square.
Exactly. A candidate is supposed to step into the public square, present a unified platform, and the citizenry debates the merits of that platform together. But when a campaign uses AI to send 1 million different hyper-personalized, emotionally engineered messages privately to 1 million different voters, the public square ceases to exist.
It's just gone.
There is no shared debate. There's just isolated, invisible emotional manipulation.
That is genuinely chilling. But it's not just how these messages are targeted to us that Biswas warns about. It's the nature of the messages themselves. We are transitioning from the manipulation of opinion to the outright fabrication of reality. We really have to talk about deepfakes.
Deepfakes represent what philosophers call an epistemic crisis.
Epistemic crisis, okay?
Yeah, an epistemic crisis is a breakdown in how a society determines what is true and what is false. This synthetic media is powered by a specific type of AI architecture called generative adversarial networks, or GANs.
I want to make sure we explain how this actually works because the mechanics are fascinating. Basically, a GAN involves two neural networks locked in a battle with each other. Think of it like a master art forger and a brilliant detective.
I love that analogy.
Right. One network, the generator, acts as the forger. It tries to create a completely fake, hyper-realistic video of a politician saying something they never said. The other network, the discriminator, acts as the detective, analyzing the video pixel by pixel to spot the fake.
And they just keep going at it.
They go back and forth millions of times. The forger learns from every mistake the detective catches until the forger is able to generate synthetic audio and video so absolutely flawless that the detective, and by extension the human eye, cannot tell it isn't real.
And because of the attention economy we discussed earlier, the speed at which this flawless synthetic media spreads across social platforms completely outpaces the speed of traditional fact-checking.
The truth can't catch up.
It never catches up. By the time an independent journalist analyzes the video and debunks it, 20 million people have already seen it, experienced the visceral emotional outrage, and internalized the damage. The correction almost never reaches the people who saw the original fake.
But Biswas brings up an even more insidious secondary effect of this technology, which he calls the liar's dividend. This is a crucial concept. Because the public knows that flawless deepfakes exist in the wild, politicians can now easily dismiss actual, genuine evidence of wrongdoing.
This is the real danger.
Right. If a real verified video leaks of a candidate taking a bribe, they don't have to apologize. They can simply look at the camera and say, that's a deepfake created by my political opponents.
Exactly the point. And because the informational environment is already so fragmented and degraded, their base supporters will eagerly believe the denial. This leads to profound epistemic uncertainty. We are entering a society where citizens can literally no longer trust the evidence of their own eyes and ears.
Wow.
This raises an important question. What happens to the fabric of a democratic society if we can no longer agree on basic visual facts? What stands out to you about trying to govern a world like that?
To me, it sounds like the ultimate societal gaslighting machine. I mean, the old foundational adage was seeing is believing. AI has completely inverted that to seeing is suspect.
King is suspect.
Yeah. If any audio or video can be faked, then nothing is objectively true. And when nothing is objectively true, people get exhausted. They just withdraw into cynicism and apathy.
Which historically is exactly the fertile ground authoritarianism relies on. A cynical, disengaged populace that has surrendered the concept of objective truth is much easier to control.
So if these algorithms are successfully manipulating our digital behavior for corporate profit and our voting behavior for political power, it's naive to think that stops at the edge of our phone screens.
It definitely doesn't.
We have to look at how this algorithmic architecture bleeds into the physical world and up to the highest levels of global governance. Let's get into what Biswas calls surveillance democracy.
The boundary between the digital and physical worlds is effectively gone. It's being driven by the rapid rise of biometric surveillance, specifically facial recognition and predictive policing. Law enforcement agencies are increasingly purchasing predictive models to forecast where crimes might occur and who might commit them, deploying resources based on algorithmic outputs.
But we have to explain the mechanism of how those algorithms make predictions because the data feeding them isn't neutral.
Not at all neutral.
Predictive policing algorithms rely heavily on historical crime data. And because of how policing has historically operated, often focusing disproportionately on certain neighborhoods, that data inherently encodes past systemic biases.
Yeah.
It creates this horrific, self-fulfilling feedback loop.
Right. The loop is the problem.
Let's say historical data tells the algorithm to send more patrols to a marginalized neighborhood. Because there are more police there, they make more arrests for minor infractions. Those new arrests are fed back into the algorithm as fresh data, which the algorithm uses to pat itself on the back and say, see, I predicted high crime here, send even more patrols.
Exactly.
It is structural bias laundering itself under a veneer of scientific objectivity.
Furthermore, we are witnessing a massive acceleration of what sociologists call function creep.
Function creep.
Yeah, this is when technologies introduced for a narrow, often benign purpose slowly expand into broader tools of social control. You might accept facial recognition because it makes unlocking your phone or getting through airport security faster. But that exact same infrastructure can easily be crept outward to continuously monitor citizens at a peaceful protest, cataloging their associations and movements without a warrant.
And it brings us to the corporations actually building and owning these tools. Biswas argues that big tech operates today as a new kind of transnational political empire. They wield quasi-sovereign power. Wait, let's define regulatory arbitrage for a second because he uses that term a lot. Are you saying these tech giants treat global laws like a buffet?
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it.
Yeah.
If the European Union passes strict laws protecting biometric data, a transnational tech giant can simply route its servers, its data processing, and its corporate shell through a small nation with zero regulations.
They just bypass the rules.
Entirely. They have the wealth and infrastructure to completely outmaneuver the legislative power of sovereign nation-states. They act as the ultimate, unaccountable gatekeepers of political visibility.
It's the classic trade-off between security and liberty, but on absolute steroids. Citizens are being subtly asked to trade their fundamental privacy and civil liberties for the mere illusion of automated safety, which begs a massive synthesizing question.
Yeah.
If big tech has more immutable data, more wealth, and more granular influence over human behavior than most traditional governments, well, who is actually in charge of our democracy right now? Is it the elected officials in the Capitol or the engineers in Silicon Valley?
Biswas's analysis strongly suggests that functional power has undeniably shifted toward the private architects of these platforms. They are the ones setting the opaque parameters of public discourse, and they were doing it without ever having to stand for an election.
So what does this all mean? We've covered a massive amount of ground today, from monks copying books by hand to the printing press, all the way to A/B-tested micro-targeting, deepfakes, and the feedback loops of predictive policing. Why should you care?
Because the stakes are incredibly high.
Because democracy is not a static relic frozen in time. It is a living, breathing mechanism, and it requires our active, conscious participation to survive. The antidote to algorithmic manipulation isn't just throwing our phones into the ocean and living in the woods.
Although that sounds nice sometimes.
It really does. But no, it's developing rigorous media literacy. It's demanding legislative transparency so we can look inside the black box of these platforms and fiercely retaining our own critical thinking.
We simply cannot allow the frictionless convenience of personalized feeds to lull us into surrendering our cognitive autonomy.
Exactly. We have to fight for our own minds. And to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day. If today's algorithms are meticulously trained to maximize outrage, division, and profit, imagine if we could train a democratic AI whose sole optimization metric was to maximize empathy, consensus, and mutual understanding. What would your newsfeed look like tomorrow if the algorithm actually wanted us to get along?
It would fundamentally alter the trajectory of human history.
It really would. We wouldn't be sitting in that VR theater, completely isolated, watching different plays designed to make us angry at each other. We might actually be able to take the headsets off, look at the same map, and finally agree on where we're standing.
That's the hope.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay critical, and we'll see you next time.